It's my pleasure to introduce our very last speaker, and we've certainly saved a treat for last. Dennis Mortensen, he is the CEO and founder of x.ai, a fantastic company that provide virtual assistants with artificial intelligence. Now, a little bit about Dennis. He's Danish, but he lives in New York, and he's a serial entrepreneur, having set up 5 companies, of which the latest is x.ai. He is passionate about artificial intelligence, and he's going to be speaking about augmented intelligence today, and how AI will change the way we work, even eliminating email, which is his ultimate aim. I'll let Dennis explain more to you. Welcome.
Hi there, my name is Dennis. I'm the CEO and founder of x.ai, and I thought I would talk about not just AI in general, and certainly not just what we do here, but agents and how they will really participate in what I describe as the future of work. And there'll be 100 opinions about this, and none of us will probably be right, but I do think we can allow ourselves to point towards some destination so that we can start to plan for how we think we should get there, or once we get there, whether it's a destination we want to be at. I brought not 15 slides, but 2 slides, and they will be the backdrop for the next good 25 plus minutes. And as I said before, don't take anything I say as gospel. They are inputs to how we certainly think the future will play out, but they're not just casual inputs. So we made a pretty dramatic bet over the last 4 years for where me and my 100 propeller head friends have tried to kind of work out this one particular agent, and we're certainly running towards that destination. Doesn't make us right, but it certainly makes us serious about where we think we're headed. So to get us started, let me just provide one example. And I'm using our own product here, but it could be any product really, or any intelligent agent that you've played around with over the last couple of years. But this is a good example of certainly what we think an intelligent agent should be. So let's just take a look at this particular slide here. And there's a couple of things going on. There's the first part here for where you're on your mobile device, you'll receive some email, there'll be a request in that email, and it'll rhyme with what you see here, something along the lines of, "Hey Michael, good to talk to you yesterday. Do you have time to meet up later today, tomorrow, or perhaps early next week? I'm free most days after 1 p.m. And it's not that this exact email is supposed to be it. It is just that this will rhyme with, I am most sure, any number of emails in your inbox right now, or certainly any number of emails that you received over the last couple of weeks. And it's not that you don't have other tasks in your inbox. It's just that this is a job for where if you're a knowledge worker, really a worker who comes into work today and touch a computer in any way, shape, or form, you will also participate in meetings. And this is not a pitch about whether meetings are good or bad. It's just a fact of life if you work in an office. If you're the most hardcore back-end infrastructure engineer, you might do a small amount of meetings. If you're the account executive on a sales team, you might do a very large amount of meetings. But we certainly all do meetings. And many of them arrive as mini requests in our inbox. And once you receive this request, there's really only been one kind of agreeable type of response to this up until this point, which was, I looked at it, I tried to understand the request, I might flip into my calendar tab, I tried to memorize some days for where I'm free and available, I might flip back into my email tab, I will craft some sort of response to this, and we'll do a little bit of ping pong back and forth. Usually, certainly in the studies that we've seen, that ping pong takes short of 2 days, Not because it takes 2 days to write these emails. It's just that I received the email at 9 in the morning. I replied back at 3 in the afternoon. The other single participant or multiple participants replied later in the evening, and time goes by, and short of 2 days later, there'll be some sort of conclusion to this. And it's not that this is hard, as in you can figure this out exactly 2 hours out of college, that if somebody asks you to meet up, whether that's an internal meeting with a colleague, an internal meeting with your boss, an external meeting with a lead or a customer, you can craft that response, and it's somewhat easy, but it is a chore nevertheless. And it's a chore for where you probably don't add much value. You add a ton of value if you're a recruiter when you sit down and interview people. You add a ton of value if you're an SDR when you call up people and try to qualify them. You add a ton of value if you're an account manager when you sit and speak to your customers about new features that your product has just been able to do. That's where the real value is, not within these little chores. Now, the way we see the future play out, in particular with these intelligent agents, is one for where these chores will disappear. So if you look at the right-hand side of the screen here, what you see is some traditional response here. We'll say something along the lines of, "Hey, John, I'd be happy to meet up at some point next week. I've seasoned in my assistant, Amy, and she can help put something on my calendar. Looking forward to it." And I think the important part of this handover is one for where the way we work and operate software change. So usually software is something which is put in place so you can do a particular task a little bit faster, slightly more accurate, within a kind of given framework. But this is different. And perhaps the best way to kind of exemplify this is if I do a financial model for the year 2018 and present that to my board, when I go into that board meeting, at no point will I be saying, "Hey, by the way, I would also like to give credit to my friend Microsoft Excel, who helped a ton putting this model in place, and I wouldn't really have been able to do so had it not been for this spreadsheet application." That's just silly talk, as in you wouldn't do that. You would take all the credit, and I think fairly so, because you did the work. This type of software, these intelligent agents, is actually flipping that around. So if you look at that right-hand side of the screen, you are now handing over the job, as in you're packaging the request into an objective and giving it to an agent. And it is now not your job anymore. As in, you should immediately click archive on this email and be done with it. All you want to see from this particular agent, Amy at x.ai, is one for where she will reach out to one or more participants and negotiate with them exactly when we can meet within the initial constraints from the guest, within any additional constraints from you as the host, within the parameters of your preferences, and figure it out over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6 emails, depending on how difficult the guests might be or how busy they might be, and then upon conclusion, send you an invite. When that job is done, you're probably not going to take credit for it. As in, you're going to be giving the credit to the agent that said, "Oh, thanks much, Amy. I appreciate that because you didn't do anything. You told the agent what you wanted it to do." So that's a paradigm shift. And you can imagine really a whole plethora of agents who will arrive just around productivity or really any function within the enterprise in the not too distant future. And you can already kind of see these arrive as we speak, and we work on setting up meetings, some work on taking notes, some will work on planning your travels, some will work on getting your receipts reimbursed, some will work on making it easier to inject information into Salesforce, because who want to sit and fiddle with a drop down and a checkbox and a radio button in the year 2018. So that's a new paradigm shift. And I think if we just take a small step back here, you should see a few things outside of the big picture of we flip things almost on its head here, right? Where before you did the job, you were assisted, to the almost opposite version where the software will do the job and it will take the credit for it, and you might inject a few parameters for how you want to do that job. But there's a few things going on here. The first thing is that we are about to walk into this new UI paradigm. And I think it's, at least to me, and perhaps it's the geek within me who's talking now, important to kind of recognize that this is a new UI paradigm, the conversational UI. And I'm sadly getting older, so I can remember taking my CS degree on the command line, as in that was the only UI for where if you wanted access to any form of compute, you would have to end up educating yourself on the command line. Then later we received some set of versions of the graphical user interface, and we certainly were able to kind of expand the amount of people who could then access compute. And we had that for decades. And then later, we might even be able to justify that the mobile UI is a distinct UI paradigm in its own right. And we've been working that for the last 10 years. What is happening, certainly in my opinion right now, given the last statistic I just saw over the weekend, which is that, at least in the US, 38 million Americans will go out and identify themselves as having access to one of these conversational UIs. Say they have an Alexa in the bedroom, they might have a Google Home, they might actually have Siri set up on their iPhone and use it actively without kind of touching the phone itself, just using voice to kind of wake it up. And that is a real change. That is a change for where syntax almost disappears. And I'll just use even my funny Danish English here to command the device to do what I want it to do. That's the one part. The other part is that device will then continue within the very strict existing paradigm of the prior UIs. So in a drop-down in Photoshop, if I see 7 functions, then you can do 7 things. But within the conversational UI, you can say anything you want. Doesn't necessarily mean that it will understand it, but you can say anything you want, and there are no immediate constraints. And that suggests that within this UI paradigm, you will expect a set of agents. Some of these agents will be extremely smart, powered by AI. Some of them will be dumb, but of high value. And I think we shouldn't immediately discount the agents just because they are simple. And we shouldn't immediately shoot to implement the most sophisticated agents that we can. I think we need to just accept the fact that we are now a few baby steps into this new UI paradigm, which consists of natural language. And within that new UI paradigm, we flipped the responsibility on its head on how we operate with software, for where the software used to help us do the job, now the software is supposed to do the job for us instead. And I'll give you just 2 examples here of simple agents. So one simple agent, which I am a huge fan of, is one from Citibank. And I can see you roll your eyes already for where, Dennis, don't give me any story about Citibank making any awesome agent within the conversational UI. But it used to be, not that many years ago, that whenever I did some charge on my debit card in Singapore, back home, Denmark, England, wherever I would go travel, Citibank would call me and say, "Hey, Dennis, did you buy that bagel for $2.98 in Singapore?" And I'm thinking, are you guys calling me to confirm whether I bought a bagel for $3 in Singapore? I'm actually quite sure I'm paying AT&T more than $3 just to have this conversation. And the whole thing was just so suboptimal. And I was angry, just partly for them calling me on something so silly. Obviously understood why they did, and equally happy when they caught fraud on my card. But the whole thing was just broken. Today, perhaps, what are we now, 2.5, 3 years into it, they just send me a text, and it's a conversational UI, and they'll ask me, hey Dennis, did you buy that bagel for $2.98? Text back 1 if yes, text back 2 if that was not the case. That is a super simple agent. It can really only do 2 things, yes and no, but it's awesome. As in, it's exactly what I want. I actually don't want to open up a Citibank app and see if there's any notifications and drill through those notifications and see if I need to take any action. Doesn't work. I certainly don't want them to call me, an even worse UI. What I want is this very natural, very simple and naive agent to speak to me and give me kind of these 2 options which I can take. That's an awesome agent. Doesn't require any AI though, but it does work. Now, then there's the more sophisticated agents. That's the one I just explained here for setting up meetings, for where the agent will have to understand a rather complex initial objective, will have to live in some level of autonomy for where you're not included, where it will go out on its own and negotiate with multiple parties on your behalf without you being involved, with all the risks attached to that. And that is not very dissimilar to that of you imagining how that self-driving car will play out. That is also one for where you'll initially just walk into it. I live on Wall Street, so when I walk into it, I'll immediately just say, hey, car, can you take me to Penn Station, please? After I've said Penn Station, that is not my job anymore. It is now the job of the car. And I need to be 100% certain that this is not a shared task. I don't have to kind of look out the window to kind of check if something is going according to plan. I told you what I wanted you to do. You then just do that. It might just ask me out of courtesy or optimization, do you want to take the West Side Highway? Okay, we can talk about whether that is good UI or not, or whether that is what the agent is supposed to do, but that I might be willing to participate in at the beginning of the journey. But it's still your job though. You're trying to make it better for me by asking me a question. Fair enough. Now, that was a long lead-in to really what I'm trying to say here. And if I jump to the next slide here, the way I see this play out, if you either somewhat believe what I just said or can somewhat see what I see here, is that there'll be 2 interesting outcomes. The first outcome is one for where I certainly don't see any future, for where you'll see tens of millions of Americans being unemployed due to AI or just due to automation in general. As in, I just can't play out that scenario. We can certainly debate that in detail, and you can go bullshit in the comment section if you want to, but I can't play that out. What I do think, though, is that we'll have to accept that there's things for where we used to add value that will not be perceived as valuable anymore, and that will be things that rhyme with the chores I just talked about, as in you being able to negotiate a time with your customer for next Wednesday at 10 for where you're supposed to call him and do that WebEx demo. That is not a value. You doing the demo and connecting with the customer of high value. You negotiating it, not so much. You sitting and fiddling with your receipts yourself to have them reimbursed, that is not of any value. You having some agent doing that for you, that should just really be something you sign up for today. So your value will be on all the things that we tend to truly define as human, as in creativity, thinking up new attack angles for how to close a customer, how to make a customer happy, how to make sure that your employees are fully aligned to the company mission, how to do any number of things for where there's no single one answer. There's no true number on the other side for where we can calculate what the answer is supposed to be, but there's a ton of creativity. There'll be a lot more value, I think, in building real relationships, not half-assed LinkedIn connections. And I'm not saying there's anything bad in that, but real relationships, as in one human connecting with another. And there'll be real value on your ability to communicate clearly with other human beings so that you all walk in the same direction. And there's any number of things here, and this could have been 8 bubbles instead of 3 that you will attach to when you try to define humanity. And I think it's for us now trying to figure out what is that. But I think we also all know kind of what that is. And I think when we look to our inbox this morning, we also know kind of what we do, which is a little bit robotic, for where emptying that inbox, many of those things which we did, they're not really something which require high intelligence. They are required, nevertheless, for me to be able to do my job. So I do it. But it is not where I add the most value as a human. So that's the one argument. We need to figure out exactly what we define as human and double down on that. But as we do that, I actually think we're going to end up slightly happier. As in, nobody ever said, you know what? I am really looking forward to the weekend to end and get into work Monday morning at 8 a.m. so I can sit and schedule meetings. No, you didn't. I will call bullshit on that part, at least. You're looking to get to work, speak to your colleagues, think out new intelligent solutions, connect with customers, see them use your solution, all those kind of sexy parts. That's awesome. That's argument number 1. The second argument, which I perhaps believe in even more, is that AI, or certainly the more intelligent agents that we'll see blossom over the next coming years, will require us to become managers. So today in any organization, we'll have only a small set of managers, and we'll have a much larger pool of good employees. But I think in this not too distant future, we'll reach this inflection point for where those chores that we just talked about, when they do disappear, your job will be one for where you are required or even expected to go out and find intelligent agents to hire, to train, and to manage. And that means you're supposed to manage your scheduling agent, Amy or Andrew. You're supposed to manage your sales agent, your travel agent, your CPA agent. You're supposed to manage a whole dozen set of agents that you have hired and trained. And that is interesting. And it's interesting because it's something that we might actually not really pick up. So a few of us will go to school, like me. You will end up with some CS degree or any other degree. You will not go to business school, and you'll then end up in a job and do good work. But you might not never really have picked up management skills. Hell, I might even just challenge people with an MBA that they don't really yet know how to manage until the point where they've managed real human beings or real entities on the other side, which you want to do something which you don't want to do yourself or which you need other people to help you to do. That is not easy, which is why in study upon study, you see that people, when they either leave their job or are not happy, it's actually due to their manager, suggesting that it's a difficult skill. But in this not too distant future, we will be required to have these management skills. That is interesting. And we can see this happen already, even within our little ecosystem of Amy and Andrew trying to schedule meetings, that young people right out of college don't necessarily know immediately how to manage these agents. And it takes a little bit of education, but we have to. We have to pick this up. And if we do so, I think it's equally realistic that we will take some of those, and I'm putting this in air quotes, employees with us from job to job. Just like you've seen people in other management positions take their assistant with them from one job to the next because I really like him, I worked with him for years, he knows exactly how to kind of manage my calendar or manage my travels or manage my budget or whatever that might be. So those are the kind of two outcomes of what I said before. So let me just give you the short conclusion here. We are about to see a brand new UI paradigm take over and be the dominant UI paradigm, what we would call the conversational UI. And there's no escaping that. It is happening as we speak. Within that new UI paradigm, what you'll see is a set of agents arrive on that. Those agents will flip software on its head, and it's not one for where the software will now assist you in doing a job. It's one for where the software will do the job for you. Some of these agents will be rather dumb or simple. Some of them will be super intelligent and have plenty of AI embedded into them. And in this new setting, once that arrives, you will have to pick up a management skill that you might not have really been working on to date, and two, you have to double down on your humanity. That was my short story. If you want to challenge that, I will try to be in the comment section, but you can also just go challenge me directly on Twitter if you want to. I'm at Dennis Mortensen, or go challenge our kind of company statement. We're at x.ai. And if you're overly eager, you can always email me. My email is dennis@human.x.ai. Thank you very much.